Yes. My guest today on the first time storytelling broadcast is Juliana Spaven. Juliana is a brand strategist at Magnetic Current. She makes brands magnetic to grow with sharp brand strategy. She is here to share with us the story of her first time solo traveling to Egypt when she was only 17 years old. That is awesome, Juliana. Welcome to the first time
Thank you so much.
storytelling broadcast.
Thank you. I'm
Okay.
excited to
I
be here.
Yeah, so I can only imagine people are thinking, "What? How did you end up going to Egypt when you're only 17 by yourself?"
Yeah,
Do tell us.
that's a good story. So I was always one of those kids in high school that was like always asking my parents to do things like, "Can we have an exchange student stay with us? Can we? I was intrigued by foreign cultures. We lived in a suburb outside of Chicago, and so Chicago is a huge melting pot. So, like on the weekends, we would go visit little Poland or little Italy or little Romania, and we would just kind of delve into these communities that existed in Chicago. And so I was always very fascinated by that. So this would have been my sophomore year in high school. So I was 16, and I saw a flyer one day in my high school that said, "We need somebody to host an exchange student from Israel." And of course, like I grabbed the sheet and ran home, and I was like, "Mom, can we host this exchange student from Israel?" I'm just like, I don't know anything about kosher. What? And it was this exchange student group that had done a swap with 20 students from the United States and 20 students from Israel. And then one family dropped out at the last minute, so the head of the group had no home, and I was like, "Oh, we'll totally host her." So, long story short, she comes. She and I hit it off like two peas in a pod. We're best friends. We're doing everything together. We're hanging out for 3 weeks. It was amazing. And at the end of it, she said, "You've got to come to Israel. You've got to visit me." And I was like, "I would love to," but the group was all going together, and I wasn't part of the Hebrew Society group. I was like, I can't go with them. It's in the middle of the school year. She was like, "Find a time when you can." So, so long story short, and it's another story, but I graduated high school my junior year. I kind of took all my classes and sped through high school, and I found myself
Nice.
graduating. I know, I found myself graduating early. And my dad was like, "Well, why don't you reward yourself with a trip to visit Miraf?" And I was like, "Awesome." So hop on a plane, go visit Marav in Israel, and we're hanging out. And she's amazing. At this point, she's in the military. She's jumping out of helicopters, but she takes 2 weeks off, gets her little Peugeot, and drives me from Haifa to Eilat and everywhere in between. She's got family where she's showing me everything. I was like a personal tour guide to Israel. It was amazing. And we're hanging out in Jerusalem, and she's like, she gets summoned in. She has to go back to work for something. And I was like, "Oh, this is perfect. You have to go in for work for a couple days." I had this romantic vision of, Egypt. And I was like, I'm gonna go to Egypt, to Cairo. She's like, "Well, I can't go because our countries aren't talking to each other at this point." But she's like, "Why don't we plan to meet at the southernmost tip of Israel in a week?" And I was like, "Awesome." So I was in Jerusalem. I booked a hotel by myself. I thought it'd be really romantic to take a tour bus through the Sinai Desert, eight
So
hours.
did you I'm just curious, did you tell your parents that you
No,
No. Okay.
this
Just checking.
is 1988, and it's the time when an overseas transatlantic call had to go underwater, and the cables and all that, and cost like $10 a minute or something crazy. And I was like, "This is fine," right? So, I mean, I know nothing about this. Grew up in a small suburb of Chicago, just about as, you know, insulated as you possibly can. And I'm like, "But this is so amazing, right?
So
Who
I so where did that romantic allure
uh,
of Egypt come from
going
then?
to church and reading about, the Israelites in the desert for 40 years and the Sinai Desert, and being so close, and spending 2 weeks running around Israel with Marav, who's like, "This is the Dead Sea. This is, Masada. This is like all these incredible, rich, historic sites." And I was like, "I'm here. Of course I'm going to go see the pyramids. Are you kidding me? Who's going to say no to that?" So I found a tour bus operator, and I found a 3-star hotel in Cairo. And I was like, "Look, I can figure this out. I'm smart. I can do this," right? So I get on the bus. And this is the start of why I wanted to tell this story, because it's hysterical. I get on the bus, and of course, there's no air conditioning. I didn't know that. And they're like, women in the back of the bus. And I'm like, what? And they're like, back of the bus, right? So 8 hours in the Sinai Desert. Of course, we roll down the windows, which meant like 20 minutes in, we're covered in dust. Breathing dust. There's like chickens in the aisle.
Did you have the
Not at
did you
this
have
point.
anything to
Not
no,
at this
okay.
point. I found a lovely German lady. She was sitting next to me. She was a little bit older than me, and we just chit-chatted, and everything was great. We could only stop if a man had to go to the bathroom. And of course, the men sat up front in the bus. It was, that's the way it worked. So anyway, we arrive at Cairo, 5 p.m. And the German lady had told me, she was like, just be smart, stick some money in your bra. I was like, okay. So I stuck my passport and about $25 in my bra. And maybe a credit card. So we get into the Cairo bus depot, and I am immediately pickpocketed. What? Gone, So I'm like, okay, I don't know anybody. Like, I'm already kind of like on edge. I get my stuff out of the bus, and I get into a taxi, and I tell the taxi driver, I'm like, go, and tell him the hotel address, and I'm like, go. And he looks at me, and he doesn't drive. And I'm like, you can go now. And he's like, oh, I'm waiting for your male escort. And I was like, oh, I don't have one. And he's like, starts driving very slowly. And he's like, where are you from? And I was like, America. And he's like, can I give you some advice? And I was like, sure. And he's like, you were here during Ramadan. Does that mean anything to you? And I'm like, no. He's like, okay. He's like, this is the most treasured and sacred and spiritual holiday for all Egyptians. And he's like, can I just give you some guidance? So this would turn out to be one of the most powerful and educational and literally life-changing conversations the next 30 minutes. He's like, you're going to take the ring off your right finger. You're going to wear it on your left finger. You are now married. You will never make eye contact with anybody. You will wear your sunglasses at all times. He was like, do you have a long skirt? And I was like, I had packed a duffel bag full of shorts and bikini tops, and I was warm, right? And I was like, yeah, but I happened to pack one skirt. And he's like, you're going to wear that every day. And I was like, okay. And he's like, do you have a long sleeve shirt? Happened to pack one. He's like, you're going to wear that every day. And he's like, do you have a scarf? And I was like, I actually had packed something that I would wear around my neck as like a fashion accessory. He was like, you will wear that every day over your head. He was like, sunglasses with your coloring. He's like, you will pass as Egyptian. That is your goal. You will not speak to anybody. You will not make eye contact. And he just scared me straight the entire ride home or to my hotel room. And I was like, trying to grasp the gravity of what he was telling me and why he was telling me this. And he's like, I'm trying to keep you safe.
Are you wondering why your friend didn't tell you? Like, why didn't she tell you all of this? Because
that's a big question. But she was just she was 1 year older than me, and she was like, if you're going to go to Egypt, that's cool. That's your own jam. I am representing Israel, and I got stuff to do over here. I got to go jump out of helicopters again. You take care of you, and see you in a week. And I was like, okay. But that's in hindsight, that's a good question. But so I had no parents to call, so anyway, so he gives me this procedure of how to act in a very religious society that I don't know anything about. And I get to the hotel, and I thank him, and I give him what money I have at this point. And I check into the hotel, and I'm like, maybe he's just being extreme. Maybe that wasn't, it was a little hyperbolic, maybe, right? So I checked.
You're a teenager. You're not just going to automatically listen to what somebody has to tell you.
So I checked into the hotel, and I'm in my room, and I'm unpacking my stuff, and I am not in my room for 10 minutes when I get a phone call, and it is the hotel manager, and he's like, I would like to invite you down to the bar for a glass of wine. I would like to understand how American girls travel alone. So that night, I did not sleep. I had a chair up against the handle of the door, and I sat there on my bed with a razor blade in my hand. And I was wide awake, and I was horrified and so scared, right? Because again, no one knew I was here. No one.
So did you go meet him, or did you not?
No, I was like,
okay.
No, oh my God, I checked out of the hotel first thing in the morning, got another taxi, and Egypt has changed a bit, but at that time, all the signs were written in Arabic. You just had to trust, you got into a taxi and you're like, am I going to wind up dead and raped in an alley, or is this guy going to take me where I need to go? And you're just hoping, you're like, please, God, please. And at that point, it had really hit me that my taxi driver was an angel. It was honestly, it was just awe-inspiring.
So
So,
when you left the hotel that morning, were you dressed? Were you following
oh,
what he
completely.
said?
I was
Yeah.
like, I
Okay.
was in my prescribed attire as he had dictated. And it was amazing because I checked into a better hotel and I was like, and I knew the credit card that I had was linked to my parents at some way. And so the money wasn't an issue. And I was like, thank God. But everyone left me alone and it was so beautiful. I figured out how to take buses in downtown Cairo. And, I would get on with black sunglasses and a head wrap and long sleeves, and they just left me alone. And I would have this freedom to go into, restaurants, and if anybody approached me, if I wanted to, if I was sitting there having a tea by myself and someone approached me, I was like, no, I'm waiting for my brother, and I would never make eye contact. And I just stuck to the rule as told to me. And I had a flawlessly beautiful, although somewhat heightened, like panicked vacation. I went to Giza, had an extraordinary experience, and watched Americans and Europeans who showed up at Giza wearing tank tops and short shorts getting mauled. Meanwhile, I'm on free camel rides and had a special tour of the pyramids just because I was, and so the big takeaway for me in telling the story was how much I learned about, it's wonderful to get out of your comfort zone, first of all, and really to push yourself and to realize that things are not the way they are at home. So that's the first lesson. The second one is to really, when you are in that kind of environment, you have to adapt and you have to let go. You're constantly making that trade-off of, am I representing myself in this opportunity versus the cultural nuances and the forces around me. And that was a wonderful opportunity for me to experience that firsthand. And I took that to bear throughout my career. Throughout my career, as I experienced new events, it was constantly walking into a new company or walking into a new country and being like, I come with a set of ideas and prescribed notions and a perspective that is my own, but is not reflective necessarily of everyone else around me. And so I need to respect and honor that and listen first, and then figure out how to adapt to that culture while still preserving myself in that instance. And that was a wonderfully powerful lesson that, as I said, I've taken it throughout my career and it's shaped me and my relationships and my friendships. So I think
Yeah.
it's a very pivotal story in a way.
That's to learn that at such a young age, and that has carried you throughout your life, will continue to do so, and now you get to pass it on is extremely powerful. But now tell us just a little bit more about Egypt itself. So you said you got to ride the camels, you got to see the pyramids. So what was that like to be there? I know there's so many places I've traveled to where I've just stayed in awe the whole time. Like, how do I get to be here? This is so incredible, so amazing. And I haven't been to Egypt yet. It's on my list. And it seems like things change a lot in those countries where safe, not so safe, avoid, back to safe, not so safe
Yeah.
situation happening in those countries.
Yeah.
But
So I'm going to date myself because when I was 17, that was 30 years ago. so it's changed probably quite a bit, but I do remember, being at the National Gallery of Art in downtown Cairo and looking out the window at some point and just seeing an entire intersection blocked by sheep and camel in the middle of the roads, and the roads are dusty and, and I was just like, wow, where am I? And just having these types of experiences of, going through the bazaar markets and the spice markets in downtown Cairo and looking at all the colors and the flavors and smelling everything and just thinking, oh my God, I don't even know where to start here. This is so cool. I want to buy everything. I want to take pictures of everything. I want to experience everything. And it really also infused a lot of my creativity and curiosity about what is that? How do you do this? I would find myself years later, in India, in another spice market, and having a very similar emotional reaction of going, oh my gosh, this is just like a toyland, and this is stuff for me to experiment with and play with and see, how do people live here, and what do you do with these spices? It was so cool. That also kicked off my love of international travel and worldwide adventure. I often, when people get to know me, they realize that I am very much the explorer archetype. And so for me, the questing to ultimately find myself as a result of going out and looking around and finding different cultures is very much embedded in my fabric of who I am. But and so that's so central. That's so central. I discovered that, and that love of curiosity and being in a foreign environment and being like, I don't know, and I love that feeling of not knowing. Of it doesn't freak me out. It's fun. Let's go play.
Well, we definitely have that in common. My favorite place and time to be is when I'm in somewhere absolutely new and all the senses come my way and I'm not familiar with any of them. And it's like, it's my favorite like time and place is when that happens. And it doesn't last very long because we do adapt to new environments so quickly that in that moment it's just like, I don't know what they're saying. I don't know, all the smells are new to me, but this is just so incredible.
Well, and it's so cool because you're taken out of your comfort zone, and so you can fight it, and a lot of people do, and that's cool, or you can just give into it, and you can just approach it with wide-eyed curiosity of how do you live, what are your mechanisms, what are your cultures, what are your traditions. I had the opportunity to live in Hong Kong for almost 2 years, and that to me was mind-blowing. It was just everything was upside down to me. Just the I couldn't read the language. I didn't understand what people, I just, I was trying to make sense of everything. I was in the city where everything was vertical, and I'm used to sprawl at some point in my life. And all of a sudden it was just these new elements that were coming at me and trying to make sense of, so much going on so quickly. It was so cool. It was so extraordinary. But again, it's understanding that there are people who are super highly attracted to that adrenaline, and other people who find it intimidating. And
Yeah, they feel in like where we thrive, they might feel the anxiety because they're not familiar with anything.
yeah,
But it's the yeah, what I love is I love when I'm in very unfamiliar terrain
yeah.
because same as what you said, it's then you go explore, you go discover, you go learn, and your senses and your creativity and everything just I mean, it makes you feel alive. Like if you take it for what it is, it's a great way to feel alive. But I have to ask you how when you saw the pyramids and touring the pyramids, what that was like.
Oh, it was that was amazing. I mean, like I had studied about it obviously in school, and so to stand there in front of them and just think these are thousands of years old, and so many people died, so many lives, and just I very much believe in ghosts, and that there are places in the world that are sacred that hold many 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 souls, and that's definitely there. It's just it's so palpable, and you just you're able to walk around, and it's kind of like a mega city with tour buses lined up and everything around it, shops and tourists and souvenirs and stuff like that. And yet you can, on a good day, you can look off in the distance and still see the sands and the desert going out into the distance and think, wow, this is what it must have been like some 2,000 years ago. I mean, it's mind blowing, like I
Yeah.
love that kind of stuff. And it just places me in a different time and a different space. And so I love that removal from the current to think about a bigger.
Were you like when you're looking at them, were you able to wrap your head around how they got built, or it's just one of those things you just it to me I've seen so many things where I still can't like we see the cranes and today's you know all the equipment that they have to build things and we're not building anything like what they built 2000 years ago or hundreds of years ago, and every time I'm just blown away about how they were able to even think
Well,
it and make it happen.
right. And I think the thing about it for us is that, we're used to seeing buildings going up in a couple of years. and to stretch out, this is hundreds and hundreds of years of lives, of generations, of families, of your great great grandfather toiled on this so that your grandfather could, so that his father could, so that your father, and then that you will, and your grandsons will, and that whole lineage of just contributing and being part of that. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I get really emotional when I look at European cathedrals too, because they're very much in the similar vein of hundreds of years of sacrifice and the collective working for something bigger, and so there's a lot of power in that. And I think, yes, absolutely, it's overwhelming. It's just like going to San Pietro in Rome and looking at the church and being like, hundreds and hundreds of years to build that, and then to come out on, and so we lose something, when a building goes up in 10 years, we're like, yeah, that was efficient, that was awesome. But there's something that's it's the victory of, or the innovation of being able to pull something together so quickly is kind of that romanticism is lost in that, I think.
I agree. I think, and I love how you just explained that, because that is so true. We don't understand the concept of something's going to be started in our lifetime. It's going to take maybe 2 to 3 other lifetimes for it to come to fruition, except maybe for what's happening now with, establishing Mars, or having things outer space, to where what Jeff Bezos and is starting now, he's not going to see in his lifetime, but he has a vision for what he wants it to be. And he started to put the foundation in place. And I think that's probably the only place where we see that now, to where, okay, we have to start it now. And it might take a few lifetimes for we're habitating a colony out in space, but it has to get started now. So yeah, so we can bring that romanticism back, perhaps.
Yeah.
I love it. What a great story. What man, that's a great way to set your life up to
and like I said, it did, man, it did really foster this love of curiosity around different cultures and in environments. I ultimately wound up becoming a diplomat with the State Department, and
I did not know that.
Yes, and traveling to and living in Sri Lanka and a number of countries, in Germany as well, and representing the State Department overseas. And one of the reasons when I was going through the interview process at State, I asked them after they said, we want you on our team. I was like, why? And they were like, because it's so clear from, 17, you were totally curious and driven to understand and live in other foreign cultures and be a part of that, not just kind of be a tourist, check it off my list, but really immerse yourself in it. And again, I credit that taxi driver somewhere in Cairo, who just set me straight. It was, like I said, an incredibly powerful 30-minute ride that kind of blew my socks off. And I was like, thank you for, in so many ways, giving it to me straight.
Yeah. And even, today's day and age, if you are traveling, getting that support of the community that you're visiting is so key. Like, you can learn a lot on social media, and you have your phone and all of that, but connect with the people, because they're going to tell you the truth, the real story, and they're going to help you out. They're going to be there for you. And no matter, it's been like that for hundreds of years, where people have traveled the world and found themselves at the mercy of where they found themselves, and got the support that they needed for that. So, yeah.
But it's funny. I'm a mom, and I have a 7-year-old now. And when I think, like, in 10 years, if she pulls the same shenanigans, oh my God. I'm like, Egypt is much scarier now. You can't go.
You're going to have to let her.
And I will get over that. But right now I'm like, oh, I hope that she has the street smarts and has a smart taxi driver like I did. Although she's heard this story before. So she's like, I know. I'm not going to, I'm not going to do anything silly when I go to.
Well, it's definitely one of the reasons why I joined the military at 17, was because I wanted to travel and I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to get exposed to all of those different things. And I think for some of us, we're just born that way. It's definitely in our spirit to go discover and explore, and
Yeah.
so only God knows what we've been up to, centuries ago, and sneaking off on ships to go see the other side of the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's although, like I said, now the next frontier is space. I'm not in any hurry though to get on the spaceship. I will admit that.
Oh, I'm totally curious. Totally curious about it. Are you kidding me?
That's awesome. All right, well, let's switch over and let's play the first time lightning round and find out a little bit more information about you.
All right.
So the way it works, I'm going to give you some options. If it's something you've done before, then you would swipe up if you were on the app. If it's something you've never done, not interested, then it's left. And if something that you've never done that would like to do, then it's right. Ready?
How do I swipe up or left?
You just verbally say it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Go on a treasure hunt.
On a treasure hunt. Well, you got to define what treasure means, but I would swipe up. Yes, of course.
Swipe
I
up.
would do that.
So it's a mixture of when you were a kid going on a treasure hunt, or even today, you can do different types of treasure
See, I mean, this
hunts
is
in different
right.
cities.
So this is the thing. Like to me, a treasure hunt is exploring a different country. That to me is like the ultimate, you know, vacation. So yes, I A, love that, and B, yes, want more of that in my life. So
Okay. Volunteer for Habitat for Humanity.
oh, I have volunteered for a lot of places, but I have not done Habitat for Humanity, and I would totally be open for it.
Awesome. So we go right on that one. Go on a Civil War battlefield tour.
I would go on a tour. I've read a couple books about the Civil War. I'm fascinated, particularly I live in Virginia. So, it's like right there. That said, I have a couple of friends, one in particular who's like a fanatic. She has, rifles from that era, clothing, garb, has a whole community. They dress up together and they meet like on the weekends and they reenact parts of battle scenes. And I'm like, a little too much. But a tour, no problem.
No problem. So you've done one before or not yet?
I have not done one, but I'd be
highly recommend it. Obviously, Quantico for OCS, TBS, Comm School. We always do professional military education and go on a Civil War battlefield tour. And in Europe, we did World War I tours and World War II tours, and they're
awesome. Where were you based? Tell me a little bit about you. I'm sure the listeners know about your story, but I want to hear.
So I did my first news station as a Marine was in Twin Palms, California. Then after that, I was enlisted first. Then I went back across country to Quantico, where I went to OCS and got commissioned. And my first tour as an officer was in Okinawa, Japan. So I was there for a little over 3 years. And I came back to Quantico. I'm not a big fan of the Northern Virginia, DC area. So, but I was there for a while, got out, started my entrepreneurial endeavors. After quite a few failures, I ended up leaving and going to New Orleans. Live in New Orleans for a while, and left New Orleans to go to Germany. And I spent 2 years in Germany, came back to the States, did a bunch of traveling for 2 years, and then went back to Germany. And now I'm in Las Vegas. And I did a tour in Iraq.
Where in Germany?
In the Stuttgart area.
Okay. Was it with the military or?
Yeah, it was with the Marine Corps. Some Marine forces, Europe and Africa are in the Stuttgart area. So love Europe. And it's been almost 2 years now. Time flies and I miss it. I watch a lot of shows that are based. So I watch a lot of BBC TV. So a lot of shows that are based in England and then all across Europe. And I watch those shows and just the background, I miss the European cities, the way that they're built and their structure and the history. And it's really hard because it's just not a regular city. There's no such thing as a regular city in Europe. And I love that. Yeah, and I miss that. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you for asking that. Okay. Next one, sleep in a houseboat.
I'm pretty sure I have. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Okay. Go hiking.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Definitely not that. Was your first peak? Do you remember your first peak?
I do not. I spent a long time, like 15 years in California. So I
Ah,
did all kinds of hiking. Oh, wait, totally not. I climbed Pikes Peak in Colorado. And I have
okay.
scars on my legs to prove it because I slid down. Overlooking a vista, trying to take a picture. The railing gave way, and it went whoosh, about 30 feet and scraped the front of my shins pretty bad. So I have these like massive scars on my legs that my kids look at. They're like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Oh." So, but yes,
Well,
it would have been.
thankfully, it probably could have been worse. Yeah, I had Travis Strong on, and he's a double amputee, and he did Pikes Peak
Uh-huh.
as a double amputee. So, and yeah, he told his story of doing that, and it's just
Wow.
incredible. Yeah. Okay. Hire a life coach.
Yes, absolutely. Believe in it. And I think they're instrumental, particularly when you get stuck in certain things. And I think we all get stuck. Particularly, I don't know how your audience skews, male or female, but I think women in particular, we sometimes we all face it, but I think women get an overdose of imposter syndrome. And I think life coaches are so instrumental to helping steer you straight and make you realize that it's just a thought. And there are other amazing thoughts in your head, and you can choose to focus on that one or choose to focus on more powerful thoughts. Huge fan, huge fan.
Awesome. Yep. Same here. That's why I have next level first coaching. So do you love what life coaches do for people? Play the drums.
I do not know how to play the drums. And I gotta tell you, I am kind of not interested. I mean, like
Not
just not
interested.
my fun. Just
That's
not
a
my fun.
left. Okay. I have a feeling you've done this. Learn a second language.
Yes. I speak a handful. So
I was going to say, how many, which ones do you speak?
So I'm fluent in German, and I use that almost daily. I'm lucky enough to have childcare, and my childcare provider is German. So it's fabulous because she and I speak German every day over the kids. So, like I get to ask her, like she'll come to me and say, do the kids, I want to take the kids for, a treat or something like that. I'm like, did they earn it? Are they good? So we can have that whole conversation in German. So that's awesome. And then when I was in my early 30s, I was in a job, and I had just gone through a divorce, and I really didn't like my job, and I was living in a city that I just didn't like, and I was like, the hell with this. So I packed up all my stuff, put it in storage, and moved to Florence, Italy for 18 months. And I learned Italian. That's what I did every day. I went to Italian school, and so adesso parlo italiano. È sempre un
Oh,
piacere per me per parlare, però nessuno parla con me. Nobody speaks Italian to me. So I just, I will walk into the kitchen in the morning and look at my kids and say, Buona mattina. My kids just look at me like, what? So it's super fun to do that. And then when I was with the State Department, I learned Tamil, which is a South Indian language that's spoken in parts of Sri Lanka. And I learned it, as part of the diplomatic corps, and the State Department very much believes that language imbues connection. And so this was something that we did regularly at the State Department. And so I learned Tamil. I used it probably about 3 times. And the extent, I mean, at some point in my life, I tested moderately fluent. So like a 2 on a scale of 5 being fluent like this. But used it 3 times and basically said, hi, my name is Juliana, and I'm a diplomat with the U.S. State Department. And
oh wow.
here. So I learned that. Could I do that now? No.
Still do. Well, it's very impressive that you're fluent in German, not an easy language to learn whatsoever. And then that was beautifully done in Italian. So, and that's awesome.
Thank you.
Take you to Germany with me.
It is so much fun. It is so much fun.
Yeah. Okay. Milk a cow.
I have no. When I was like 7 or 8 years old, I went to a dairy farm with my parents and sat down and squeezed a couple of drops out of a cow. So
That counts. Watch a burlesque show.
Yes, I have.
All right. What did you think of your first burlesque show?
I remember it was in Los Angeles at probably around 15 something years ago, and or even earlier. And I remember thinking, this is a work of art. This is not a strip show. This is
Yeah.
literally this is a very intoxicating and seductive. It's a story that you're telling, and so it's how do you tantalize? How do you draw someone in? How do you hook them? How do you tease them? How do you make them wait for the finish, kind of thing? And it's not just a strip show, right? So I thought it was a lot more intellectual than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it's very seductive, very fascinating and interesting. And you forget, like, it's not about seeing things. It is about the art of it.
Mhm.
That's very well said. Okay, so moving on to today's first time story prompt, which is first hospital visit.
First hospital visit, I was really fortunate, was uh, when I got a really bad kidney infection, and then wound up in the hospital because I wasn't showing any other symptoms. And then I just got this like crazy fever all of a sudden, and I was at I don't know, just that was I was it was pretty scary. They had me overnight at the hospital because my some count in my liver was really high, and they were like, and so they had me overnight, and I was fine. They gave me the right medicine, and I was fine. But
How old were you?
this was like 40. And then the next time I was in the hospital, it was to have my daughter. So I'm lucky.
Oh, wow, yeah, not many hospital visits.
Oh no.
My first hospital visit was when I tried skateboarding for the first time. That did not go well. That ended with a twisted ankle. So,
Oh.
it should have been my first lesson of discovering that I do not do well with both my feet planted on the same thing. So, anytime that has happened, it's never turned out very well. So,
So skiing, snowboarding, not your jam.
if my feet are separate, I'm good. So, skiing, but no, snowboarding, if my feet are brought together on the same board. And one of the big things and I did one lesson with just playing with the kite, but with the kite, I want to do kite surfing. And at some point, that means my feet are going to get back together on one board, and we shall see what will happen then. So I'm trying to make sure that that image of falling down that skateboard is removed, that I can overcome it. So I almost drowned as a kid, and I was still able to scuba dive using the mind power of just get over it. Although I always go through my oxygen a lot faster than everybody else.
There's something that I'm completely freaked out about. I've done scuba once, and I've done snorkeling like 3 or 4 times. And I was obsessed with sharks as a kid. Obsessed. I have posters of like sharks all over my room. And I have a fear of the deep blue, the unknown, like that you can't see past, 20 or 30 feet. Hell no. I am like a hot panicked mess underwater. Oh my God.
Ah,
Get me
that
out.
okay. That's one frontier she is not further discovering.
Nope. My friends were like, "Oh, you got to try nighttime scuba diving," and I'm like, "No, I don't. I really don't."
All right. So, final question. How have you been making the best of the current situation? What's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic?
That's a great question. So to be honest with you, when COVID first came out, I kind of like freaked out. Like I think probably most people have like, and I just wanted to find, and I was on this information quest to find as much as possible about the virus, what did it mean for my kids, my family, potentially. Da, da, da. And then I kind of realized that we were all gonna keep moving forward. However, kind of broken we're doing now. And I was like, I have a lot of value to give. And I have a lot of prospects, and I have a lot of clients who need me to show up for them every day. So I could continue to lay on my sofa in the fetal position and woe is me, or I could, get a grip and get on with it. And so I've been doing that, and it's been amazing. I did a couple podcasts over the last couple weeks. I've reached out to old clients, and they've been like, "Oh my God, this is so great that you've, reached out to us. Can you help us with X, Y, and Z?" So, and I've also done the same for prospects. So it's been really refreshing for me that I'm finding myself in this time fortunate enough to be busy and to have work coming in on a steady and regular pace. So I love that. So, but I'm a huge believer, and I think you might see this on LinkedIn. I'm a huge believer in leading with value. And so, when I post something on LinkedIn, I really strive to provide value to my readers and my followers. If you don't follow me and you're interested in finding out more about branding, please follow me, Juliana Spaven, on LinkedIn, because almost every single post is focused on how you can grow your brand, whether it's being smart about your competition and how to study your competition effectively to write a better brand for yourself, or understanding your consumer, or getting sharper insights, figuring out what your message is and how you go about doing that. That's stuff that I love doing, and so I talk about it and write about it. I do videos and LinkedIn posts as well. And I constantly strive to just provide value.
Yeah, and you definitely do accomplish that, and you're really great at bringing value to others on their posts and opening those dialogue and that communication and being there for them and assisting where you can. And definitely seen that, Ergo, while you're on the show.
Oh, thank you.
Somebody worth having on. And what about for your kids? So did you switch to homeschooling, or?
Like I said, I'm still blessed to have my childcare provider here. So she's with us regularly. And so for the time being, we're good. I have a 3.5-year-old. And so there is really no school for him. He gets frustrated after about 20 minutes of meeting his preschool class on Zoom calls. He's like, "I'm done with this, Mom." So, it's for him, it's really kind of hard. For my daughter, who's 7, it's a lot easier. She's got her homework, but even for her, it's hard. We all miss being around each other, and we miss people. And, I think particularly in the younger ages, it's so much more about socialization and getting those really important learning experiences about how to navigate socially than it is about academics. So, so I'm kind of like, you know what, this is not the year she's gonna, qualify for Mensa. I'm not worried about it. We're gonna be just fine. If she's having a bad day, I'm like, "You're having a bad day. We're not gonna do the homework. That's cool." And just adopting a sanity approach to it, because what else are you gonna do? These are incredibly unusual times. I mean, never before in the history of our world have we basically shut down, across the board and waited for something to pass like this. And I think we're going to be fine on the back end. We are absolutely going to be fine on the back end. And we just got to let this pass, and we got to take care of ourselves and be healthy and be smart and wait this out. And
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I had so shortly after the school started, we're in the process of shutting down. I had someone, Lee Benz, come on to do a show on expert advice for your first time homeschooling. And it was just so eye-opening because she's like a true homeschooler. She's been doing for 30 years, and she actually helps parents put together the curriculum to apply for college. So for high school age homeschoolers, so that they can apply for college. And it was just so eye-opening. And after listening to her, I was like, "Oh, if I had kids, I would totally be homeschooling."
what did she say? I'm so curious. I'll go listen to the podcast, but
well, so her thing was what you mentioned. So the curriculum, if you can make your child hungry for learning, right? So it's more about developing their curiosity, giving them a love to learn, a love for knowledge, and a love to explore, to discover. And in those young school age, she said, as long as they get maybe an hour or two of reading, of vocabulary, of math, that's fine. That's all they need. what they need more of is that sense of discovery and curiosity, because that's what's going to serve them for the rest of their lives. So she really does focus more on how to get that wholesome child concept. And she actually mentions that the because I brought that up and I'm like, well, people will say that school is about socializing. And she actually, you should really listen, because she mentions, no, it actually isn't, because you have a classroom, 20, 30 children. And what you really teaches them is to fall in line, is what they're taught. So there might be a little bit time, during recess where they're socializing, but otherwise they're told not to do this, do this, do that. So they're being shaped in a certain way. Versus if you homeschool, your child can quote unquote run free and do the exploration. And then when they have time with other children, then it's solely to socialize. It's solely to have fun and to play and to, be even more creative in the presence of somebody else. So she really breaks it down beautifully. And I was like, man, like after talking, I was like, oh, if I had kids, I would so be homeschooling. And then I even mentioned, I'm like, if you have kids, bring them, send them to me. I'll homeschool, just because I love learning. And if you can
Mhm.
pass that on. And then she mentioned how it doesn't matter if you have a high school degree or you never graduated high school or you have a PhD, because homeschooling curriculum teaches you how to teach.
Right.
So it prepares you a great deal more to be able to teach, versus teachers go to school to learn to educate large classes.
Yep.
So it's so different, it's so night and day. Like for me, it was just such a wake up call of, oh wow, that's incredible. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was just
Well, we might get the chance to learn how to homeschool. I mean, seriously, it every day I'm hopeful for a solution, and yet also realistic that, I am like many other parents where, I don't know that I want my kids to be the guinea pig, and okay, you go to school, hope you don't get sick.
yeah.
You know?
And the biggest point she actually made too is that you as a parent are going to hold them more accountable. You are so much more invested in your child, and the fact that you're so much more invested than any teacher can ever be, just because they have 20, 30 kids, you have one, maybe two child. Yet you're going to learn their learning style. You will cater more to what they need. And that's ultimately what makes homeschooling so successful, and why, parents choose to do that. Of course, you have to be in a certain position to be able to do that.
Sure.
But I think working from home is going to become a much greater reality as well. So I think that should have some parents really think about, well, maybe
Yeah.
homeschooling, because there is a way for, while you're working, your child is busying him or herself with
Mhm.
what they need to learn, and they're not disturbing you, because they're getting accustomed to this new arrangement that exists in the home now, to where you're spending a lot more time together and you're growing and learning different ways.
Right.
So I think it's just an incredible time. I mean, it's also a devastating time for anybody who's lost anyone. I mean, that's just heartbreaking, but it's also just an incredible time if you choose to look at it that way.
I definitely agree that there is a pivot happening, and I think we're going to see a lot more people saying, "Okay, you can work from home," and I think that's going to be the norm. So I think it's going to shape, even things like mandatory 5 days a week school. I don't know that that's going to be, that when this all passes, that's going to be the case.
Yeah. Well, yeah, which is interesting, especially, and we could talk forever, but especially because in Germany, they do have longer school year, and they definitely do their school system so much differently than
Mhm.
how we do. Uh, so I think I, some, sometimes, I mean, I made the choice to not have any children, but sometimes it's also like because I would be experimenting. It's like I've spent my life being my own guinea pig, like experimenting on myself. That if I have a child, we would definitely be experimenting on, how to best go about doing this and getting them the most out of it, the most interested, the most value. Just the fact that that opportunity has been provided to parents right now, to me, is extremely powerful and important, to not just want out of the current situation into whatever normal used to be, is realizing that the normal was actually probably letting your child down. Um, so not to take any away, I mean,
So,
not to take away from the value of teachers. And I think, everybody's realizing teachers should be getting paid more and all of that as well. But yeah.
cool. I'll have to definitely check that podcast out. So.
All right. Well, okay. Like I said, I could just keep talking to you. Thank you, Juliana, for being on and sharing your story.
It was
I
super
really,
fun.
all right. Thanks.
Take care.